Now this is looking good except for the fact that where she blinks, we obviously do not want to see the contact lenses. So let's make a copy of our bottom layer of the woman's eye. We'll place it on the very top layer of everything. We'll add a garbage mask that will create a holdout mat which allows us to expose just the contact lenses, and then we can animate the masks to follow the eye blinking. But this time, instead of using the hotkeys of Shift and Option and dragging on the layer, let's just create a new layer and then use copy and paste to duplicate the bottom layer. So this time, to create a new track layer, I'll choose the Track Plus button right here. A new layer has been created. I'll right click over the bottom layer, choose the copy option from the flyout, then hold Command and hit V. So now we have a copy of the live action footage as our top layer. I'll right click, go to Add Effect this time, and we'll choose Garbage Mask. The garbage mask is selected by default. Let's click the editor button to step right into it. Now, what we're looking at by default, and you can see over here where it says viewing, is the result. Remember, with the garbage mask, anything that was white is going to be opaque. Anything that is black is going to be transparent. And we haven't created any garbage mask yet, so that's why everything is white. Let's change what we're looking at. From the viewing flyout, we can expand it. We can go to Garbage Mask Inputs and choose Front, or we could hit F1 to look at the front and use F4 to look at the end result. But for now, I'll choose Front, and now we're looking at the actual footage that the garbage mask is applied, the incoming footage. Down on the UI, under Object, I'll choose Add, and I'll draw a garbage mask right around her eye. I'm going to keep the mask really simple. We're going to animate this by hand to follow the blinking movement. So we don't want to have too many control points. Obviously, sometimes you have to have a more complex mask depending upon the shape that you're trying to create. But now I've got my garbage mask. Let's hit F4 to take a look at what our end result is. Now, if you remember a second ago, I just said anything that is white is going to be opaque. Everything that is black is going to be transparent. So this is the opposite of what I really want. So what we need to do is come down to the UI with that mask selected and choose the outside option. Now, this area that is black is going to be punched through. It's going to have a hole in that top layer, exposing the contact lens underneath, and we can animate this mask to follow the movement of the actual blinking. Before we get to that, though, I want to make an adjustment to my offset, which allows you to create feathering on the mask. So I'm going to click and add a positive value of something around, I don't know, let's go to about 10. Now remember, I'm at the first frame. Always keep in mind auto key. If this is on and you're at a different frame, I'm creating a keyframe for that value. And one other thing I want to point out that's very important is we're going to take advantage of this button over here that reads Set Key. It's a great feature if you want to set a keyframe on every value of your selected mask. And we're going to utilize that in a second. I mention this because when you choose Set Keyframe, it is going to set a keyframe for the offset also. So if I'm at a different frame and I have not set my offset yet, when I choose Set Key, I will be setting a keyframe for the offset at the current value, which would have been 0 had I not adjusted it now. Then later, if I wanted to adjust it, I would have to navigate to each one of the keyframes I'm about to create using the Set Key option, and I would have to change the offset value at every keyframe that I use this option. It's just something to keep in mind when you're doing your offset adjustment. If you can, set the offset value before you ever use this option of Set Key. But with that said, remember, we can always go into our animation curve editor and very easily select an entire channel, such as the offset channel, and delete all the keys that were created when you use the Set Key option, and then go back to the first frame, make the adjustment to the value you want so that it maintains the same value through all your frames. Anyways, let's go back to creating the masks. All right, we want to look at the incoming footage so we can animate this mask. I'm going to hit the F1 key. So now we're looking at our incoming footage again. Now the first thing we want to do is animate the mask as an object so that it follows along, so we can track it. But instead of retracking this is the same footage we'd used earlier, so we already saved that tracking data. So going over to the left side of the UI, you'll see all these options such as position, rotation, scale, share, and center. These are relevant to the axis that is applied to the mask itself, the object itself. Just like we had out in the action tool where you have an axis on your image to control the image, the graphic that we used, we can do the same with our mask itself. So as I just said, see position, rotation, scale, share, center, and then we also see the stabilizer / tracker button. So let's choose stabilizer. We step into the tracker. Let's choose load. And there's the contact lens track we created earlier. I just select it. That saved preset is now loaded into the tracker that I'm in. I choose return, go back out to the mask tool, and as I scrub along, you can see my mask is now following along perfectly. Now it is time to keyframe the actual shape of the mask. So what we're going to do is go to the frame right before she starts to blink her eye, and right afterwards, I want to set keyframes at the current value. Then we can easily go to where she's blinking her eye and animate the mask. So I want to go, well, you know what, let's do this. Let's switch our viewing option right now to not be timecode, but be frames, so we can easily see where we're at. And then we can use our left and right arrow keys to move forward and backwards in the frames to see right before she starts to blink. So it looks like frame 14 is a good point to where we want to create keyframes. So now I choose set key. Now every parameter for this mask just received a keyframe. Let's use the right arrow key, navigate forward to where it looks like her eye is fully open. That looks like it's about frame 22. So I'll choose set key. And now you can see the tick marks, the keyframes inside of my scrub area, playback area. Let's use our left arrow key. Let's go to where it appears that she has closed her eye fully. And then I'm just going to grab the control points by selecting them. You'll see they turn red when they're selected. And I'm going to manipulate the Bezier handles, manipulate the actual shape of the mask. Something like this. Now I'll use my right arrow key. Okay, that and left arrow key. That looks pretty good. Let's see, one. Maybe at frame 17, we want to just manipulate this just a little bit more. Obviously, auto key is on. And just for reference, the default interpolation for your animation is Bezier, unless you changed it in your preferences. That's why we'll get a nice smooth transition between each keyframe. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, right before she closes her eye here, left arrow key, right arrow key. Right there, it looks like frame 55. Choose set key, right arrow key several times. She's fully open at frame 63. Set key, left arrow key, find where her eye is closed the most. It looks like right there, frame 57. Once again, we just start manipulating our handles, the Bezier, the control points of the mask, whatever you need to do to have the mask close following the eye. Let's move forward. At frame 58, I'm going to make another adjustment. Looks like she held her eye closed a little longer right there. And we move forward. Everything else, that looks good. Okay, so let's now duplicate this and have the same mask over here. To do that, let's switch to a 2-view layout. So out of my flyout, I'll choose 2 up. I'll select this viewport over on my right-hand side. I could go to my viewing option and I can choose garbage mask schematic, or I'll discard that. More commonly, I just hit the escape key with this viewport selected, and now we're looking at the schematic. I'll choose the fit option from my flyout. So now you can see there's the default camera, and we have our axis and our garbage mask. We want to duplicate this, right? So down here below, make sure this flyout that reads selected is set to branch, and then I choose duplicate. A new garbage mask with its own axis has now been created. To move both the nodes around at once, hold the option key, select the axis key, and drag your mask over to this side. Now we want to position this mask over here. Again, like before, we do not want to alter and change this axis because it has all of our tracking data applied to it. So in the garbage mask tool, we can create more axes and attach them just like we did in the action tool. Under object, you'll see it reads GEOM, geometry. That's your mask. I'll click on it once to toggle to an axis. I'll then click the add button and a new axis is created. I'm going to hold the shift key when you're in the garbage mask schematic and actually in the action schematic. If I hold shift, I'll drag my axis holding the shift key so it is over the connection line. I release it and now it is part of this flow. So once again, this is the tracking axis. I'm going to just name that track, and this is our adjustment axis. One thing I want you to notice is I'll double click on this axis to make sure it is selected. You can see the name is in the object field there, indicating it's selected. Because the original axis was tracked, the center point for this, the manipulator to adjust this actual mask, is at the original location where we put the tracker box. But if you want to, you can go to the center values over here on the left-hand side and just make adjustments to them to get it somewhere more centered to the mask itself. You don't have to do this. I just like to do this. It's really just a visual thing for myself. Now I can grab the X or the Y arrows of the manipulator and reposition this over here over this eye. Be careful not to grab the Z axis, the Z arrow, because we do not want to alter the Z position for this mask. Remember, make sure you're at the first frame before you do this. And of course, you can also use the sliders down below for position to get this exactly where we want it to be, somewhere around there. Once I get it in position where I like it, I can even take the Z rotation if I want and rotate this a little bit and then reposition this so it fits where I want it to be. I'm setting a value, let's say negative 1340. And if you want to have an exact amount for the Y, I've got it set to a minus 124, and I've rotated my Z minus 21. Now if I scrub, we can see we have our mask now following along. Let's select this viewport, and I'll hit the F4 key because we want to see our end result. And that's obviously not the end result that we want. And that's because we need to make some adjustments to the new mask we just created as to how they interact with each other inside this garbage mask. Remember, our first garbage mask, we set it to be outside. So this one, what we want to do is select the second one, the new one. Let's turn off the outside option, and then we want to take the color parameter and drag it to 0. Keep in mind, I was at the first frame once again, auto key is on, and I mention that because the parameter of the color of a mask can be keyframed over time. Because if I wasn't at the first frame, I would have been created a gradual animation, a change of the color parameter over those frames, and that's not what I want. So we were at the first frame when we made these adjustments. All right, so now we've got our two masks created. Let's choose the exit button, which returns us back out to the timeline. And now to composite this new layer over the bottom layers, we need to enable the composite setting. As soon as I do, you're going to see this glow happening on the outside. That's due to the feathering of the mask and the pre-multiplied, unpre-multiplied setting of the comp here. So with the comp selected, for segment, just switch this to be unpre-multiplied. Now as we scrub along, we can see that our animated masks are revealing the bottom layers, the contact lenses, just as we wanted them to. Now if we want to render this out, I can use my shift key so I can select all my layers, then I click the render button and the rendering process starts. That looks like that's going to take about 24 or 25 seconds on my 4-year-old Mac Pro, which is pretty actually impressive when you think about what we have. We've got multiple layers. Some of them have the action tool on them that's been keyframed and animated. Some have blurs that have been animated and keyframed. And obviously we have the tracked garbage masks on the top layer. So that's pretty impressive. Once the render is done, I hit the play button. We play back our frames. And that looks pretty good. Obviously, if we wanted to fine-tune anything, we have access to everything that we've just done. And also, I like to stress the fact that there are many ways of achieving the same end result inside of Smoke. This is just one example of how a shot like this can be done. All of this could be done in Connect Effects if you wanted to. But I felt that as far as a demo and a tutorial, this was a great example of the compositing capabilities you have directly inside the timeline here inside of Smoke 2015. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I really hope you did learn from it. I've got more tutorials I'm working on. They'll be coming soon. In fact, here's a sneak peek of the end result of the next tutorial that I'm working on that will be available to you soon.